We took 6 reselling softwares and put them to the test so you don't have to. We stress tested onboarding, cross-listing, automations, and looked at what will actually save you time, what will actually grow your business, and most importantly, what will actually make you more money. Whether you're an established reseller wondering if you should make the switch, or you're just starting out and overwhelmed by the choices, by the end of this video, my goal is that you'll know which software is aligned with your needs, will help you achieve your goals, and fits within your budget. So here's the plan. Today, we're reviewing Vendoo, List Perfectly, Flyp, Crosslist, Nifty, and Primelister. First, we'll do a rapid comparison of all 6 tools using the following criteria: onboarding, cross-listing, automation, which includes automated sharing, offers to likers, sales detection, and auto delist. Next, bookkeeping, analytics, inventory management, and lastly, pricing. Then we'll do mini reviews on each platform and talk about my overall impression and experience. And finally, we'll wrap up with my final picks and rankings. There are chapters in the description if you want to jump around. But a quick note before we dive in, the tools we mentioned are all going to be linked in the description. Some of those links are affiliate links. Using them costs you nothing. In fact, you often get a discount, and it genuinely helps keep videos like this free. So if you use those links, thank you so much in advance. It really does make a huge difference for our channel. Also, I think it's important to provide context for where I'm coming from. My partner Matt and I founded a reselling software called Fern, which we recently shut down. It was a very humbling experience, and it gave us a deep respect for how hard it is to build a reselling software. These softwares have huge code bases with constant demand for new features while balancing the requirements to keep up with marketplace changes and debugging the many things that can go wrong. So my intention today is to provide honest, objective information based off my experience using these softwares. I don't want to throw shade, I don't want to nitpick, but I will be including some criticisms because I think it's important to know the good, the bad, and just the full picture before investing your time and money into these softwares. And the truth is, we are genuinely rooting for each one of these founders because we know the hard position that they're in, and we also know that when they succeed, the whole reselling community benefits. So as you share your thoughts in the comment section, please remember these are real people working really hard behind these products, so please be kind. Okay, let's start with the quick comparison matrix and we'll dive into each tool. First up on the list, onboarding. If you're a brand new reseller, getting started with any one of these softwares is pretty straightforward. Every one of them walks you through an onboarding with a clear tutorial. You can follow along, get connected, and get listings live pretty quickly. So this section is really more intended for established resellers, especially if you already have inventory cross-listed to multiple marketplaces, because then onboarding becomes a little bit trickier. I was really impressed with Flyp's importing flow. It does take a little bit of time, but it has a great tracker in the corner that tracks your progress, lets you know what failed to import, and it allows you to retry those failed imports. And then I was also shocked that it merges everything for you automatically. And it really does a great job of auto merging. But in my opinion, Nifty has the best onboarding flow. I actually don't know how they're able to do it because it is incredibly fast. You can import and auto merge all of your inventory within a few minutes. And it does require you to verify all the merged inventory, but that's also pretty quick because you can just select all and then click verify. Also, Nifty is the only software on the list that allows you to import sales, so your analytics don't start at 0 from day one. There is a limit to your sales import. It pulls roughly the last 90 days, and from our experience with Fern, I think that's likely due to eBay's API window. But even being able to import the sales data from the past 90 days, for me anyways, was really valuable. Okay, next up, Vendoo, List Perfectly, and Crosslist are all very similar. Vendoo and List Perfectly were first movers in the cross-listing software space. Before they existed, cross-listing was incredibly difficult, which meant that most sellers, including myself, just didn't do it. And I just want to take a moment to appreciate the innovation that both Vendoo and List Perfectly perfectly brought to the reselling community. But I think it's because these softwares were built assuming that the user hadn't started cross-listing yet, that the importing and merging flow is not really ideal. Vendoo and Crosslist.com are almost exactly the same. You import all of your listings from one marketplace, and then you have to copy and paste the URLs from other marketplaces into your imported listings. So say you imported everything from Poshmark, you'd then copy and paste all of your eBay URLs into your Poshmark imported listings. And if you have hundreds of items, that can take a really long time. With Crosslist.com, you can pretty much skip this step because they don't really have any features that require managed inventory. But with Vendoo, you do have to do it if you want to use their auto delist function. And then with List Perfectly, it's similar but slightly better. Instead of copying and pasting URLs, you have to head into each marketplace, click on each listing, and link it back to your List Perfectly listing. I'm not a huge fan of either one of these onboarding flows. Again, it's fine if you haven't started cross-listing, but if you've already started, it's incredibly time-consuming and tedious. The last one is Primelister, which is pretty solid. It did take a couple of tries for me to connect, but once I was connected, I was able to import everything. I do wish it had a better progress tracker. You can go to the Tasks tab on List Perfectly, which tells you what has been imported, but you're pretty much left clueless as to how many imports are left in the queue and how much time is left, etc. Primelister also has a pretty decent version of auto merge. It's just a little bit tedious because you have to expand each listing to verify the merge was correct, and I really wish there was a select all button, but it's still a really clean and streamlined solution. Next up, let's discuss listing and cross-listing. This is the core functionality that you're going to be using on a day-to-day basis, so it's really important that this functionality operates smoothly. First of all, I'm coming from the perspective that listing to more and more marketplaces is not necessarily a winning strategy. I think sticking to the largest 3 to 5 platforms is your best bet. After that, there's pretty steep diminishing returns, but if you're someone who wants to list to the smaller reselling platforms such as Vinted, Vestiaire Collective, Grailed, etc., that's definitely something to consider when choosing a software. So as we go through each software, I'll put up a graphic of what marketplaces each software currently supports. There are 2 different formats when it comes to listing and cross-listing, and I've created names for these, so bear with me, but there's the centralized listing flow where the listing is created and cross-listed entirely within the software's own interface. And then there's the marketplace assistance flow, where the software helps you fill out the actual listing form on each marketplace's website. So Vendoo, Nifty, Flyp, and Crosslist.com use the centralized listing flow. List Perfectly and Primelister use the marketplace assistance flow. This kind of just comes down to preference, but I think the centralized listing flow is a lot faster and much more streamlined, so it's the one that I would recommend. Okay, let's start with Vendoo. I'll show what marketplaces they support up on the screen. Vendoo has a really solid listing and cross-listing flow. They created a flow that a lot of other softwares copied. Fern used a similar flow, Flyp uses a similar flow, and in my opinion, it was the best way to list until Nifty came along, but we'll get to that in a second. You start with a basic form, you fill out all the basics, and then that form auto-fills all the selections onto each marketplace form. And then you go to each marketplace form one at a time, fill in what's missing, and hit publish. The one thing that Vendoo doesn't transfer on their base form is size to the other marketplace forms, but it transfers most everything else. So overall, I think it's a really smooth user experience. All right, next is Flyp, and here are the marketplaces that Flyp supports. Like I said, Flyp uses a very similar flow. When I tried Flyp several years ago, I thought it was really pretty buggy, but when I was testing it this time around, I was again so impressed with the user experience. It's pretty much exactly like Vendoo, but the only thing that I learned the hard way is to be sure to save what they call your universal form, which is your base form, before heading to other marketplace forms, because otherwise it's just gonna delete everything. You'll lose everything. So hit save and then move on. Vendoo's not like that, so just something to keep in mind. Also, it doesn't map category or size across the forms, but for its price point, I think Flyp's cross-listing flow is really solid. Next is Nifty, and here are the marketplaces that they currently support. So as someone who designed a cross-listing software, when I saw Nifty's cross-listing flow, I was shocked because I was just like, wow, this is brilliant. And I really think it is. You can just fill out your details at the top of the single form, and it autofills those details for each marketplace within that single form. And then you click list item once and it quickly lists it to each marketplace. It takes way less time, especially when you use their AI feature, which we'll discuss in a second. But I think the one single form solution is by far the best cross-listing solution on the market today. And it's one I wish I'd thought of. Okay, crosslist.com. Again, I'll pop up the supported marketplaces up on the screen. I think crosslist.com has a really brilliant solution to cross-listing as well. Listing and cross-listing is essentially all that this software does, but it does it in a way that is completely different than any other software. With just a few clicks, you can bulk cross-list your entire inventory. You literally just select what you want to cross-list, select the marketplaces you want to cross-list to, and it does it all for you. The only problem with doing it this way is that it omits a lot of details. On Poshmark, for instance, it skips over subcategory, original price, style tags, etc. I think in general, these things are fairly important, especially something like subcategory, and you could go in and manually fix them, but at that point, you're not really saving time. However, if time is what's in the way of you cross-listing, I think cross-listing this way is a really viable solution. And at the end of the day, listing onto Poshmark without subcategory, for instance, is just way better than not listing there at all. I do want to note though that a major caveat about this bulk cross-listing flow is that I know a lot of y'all are Poshmark-centric resellers looking to cross-list to eBay, and if you are attempting to bulk cross-list to eBay, it doesn't transfer over the category, which is a required field to post on eBay. This triggers an error message that says you need to make the adjustments, and so going in and manually adding the category really eliminates the ability to cross-list, and at that point it just turns into a normal cross-listing flow. So if you're going from Poshmark to eBay, I'd say crosslist.com is probably not the solution for you, but if you're going from eBay to Poshmark or Depop, for example, it could be a really viable solution. Next up, List Perfectly. List Perfectly covers many marketplaces, which I'll pop up on the screen. Like I said, List Perfectly has a different cross-listing flow. You can add details directly from List Perfectly, or you can use the Chrome extension to grab one or multiple of your listings from a marketplace. You then select the marketplaces you want to cross-list to, and it will open tabs for each marketplace for each listing. You'll then fill out the missing details on those tabs and publish on those native marketplaces. This is actually the flow that I used in the beginning of my reselling career because I was just so used to the native marketplaces that I didn't want to stop listing there. But now at this point, I feel like it's a pretty clunky solution. It's definitely much slower than listing on Nifty, for example. But again, it does come down to personal preference, and I know a lot of people like listing this way, so it just comes down to what works for you. Okay, lastly, Primelister. Here are the marketplaces that Primelister supports. Primelister has created a similar cross-listing flow to List Perfectly. You use the Chrome extension and select one or multiple of your listings from a marketplace, then select the marketplaces you want to cross-list to, and then it opens tabs for each one of those marketplaces for each listing. You'll then fill out the missing details on those tabs and publish to those native marketplaces. While I was testing, which I know it's a little different for everyone, but while I was testing, Primelister was a bit slower than List Perfectly, and in some instances it did fill out fewer fields slightly, but otherwise I felt like they were very similar. Okay, let's talk about generative AI for listings. I know some of us have really strong opinions here, but AI is starting to be integrated into more and more reselling softwares. However, on some softwares, the AI feature is genuinely helpful, and on others, it just feels like a marketing gimmick. So first, who doesn't have AI right now? Flyp and Primelister don't offer any AI features. Next, who has basic versions. Crosslist.com and List Perfectly use AI to pre-fill a lot of fields. You upload your photos and it scrapes basic info from it and fills out your title, description, condition, etc. This does save time, but when I was testing it, category and size were still missing, and it really didn't come close to identifying style name. Vendoo recently rolled out their AI description feature. It's still in beta, so hopefully they are improving it, because at this point, I don't really think it's useful at all. It prompts you to enter information yourself, and then it basically just puts that information into paragraph form, but it creates a much worse title and description than I would have manually, so it kind of ends up being counterproductive and time consuming. So with Vendoo, I'd probably skip AI entirely at this point, but Nifty has the opposite AI experience. This is what I think AI listings should feel like. You upload your photos and then it fills out the vast majority of your form for you. It fills out nearly every single field, including optional eBay fields with helpful specifics. Also, it creates a very usable title and description. And something that really shocks me is that about, 30 to 50% of the time, it will identify the style name for me. And I feel like the more I use it, it just keeps getting better and better at identifying those style names. So I don't know, if you haven't used it, I think it's something that you just have to experience for yourself. All of the softwares mentioned in this video have a free trial. So again, if there's something that sounds interesting to you, check out the links in the description, click around, play with it, see if it works for you. But mainly, I'd say that Nifty's AI is a huge time saver and has the ability to actually improve your listing quality. It's the only one on the list that actually felt like an upgrade to my workflow. All right, next we'll jump into automation, sharing, offers to likers, sales detection, and auto delist. More than almost anything else, automation is critical for generating sales regularly. First of all, there are two ways that these softwares integrate these automated features. Some tools run on the back end, and this is often referred to as cloud-based in the reselling community, and they keep working even if your computer is off. You don't have to have a browser open, you don't have to have your computer open at all. Others run on a Chrome extension, and those only work while your browser is open and your computer is awake. Within our list, Nifty and Primelister are the only ones that operate on the back end. Vendoo, List Perfectly, and Flyp are extension-based and require you to keep your browser open and your computer on at all times in order for them to work. And Crosslist doesn't offer any automation, so they'll be omitted from this section. This is a pretty big differentiating factor because not having to have a computer on and a browser open at all times of the day is really nice. And I definitely think that gives Nifty and Primelister an advantage here. But let's start with sharing. Some of these platforms are more customizable than others when it comes to sharing, but they all do about the same basic task of sharing your closet regularly. On Flyp, you can schedule full closet shares and keep control over timing. Vendoo also has scheduled shares, but you choose a share count instead of share the whole closet. List Perfectly doesn't allow you to schedule, but you choose how often to share your closet and during what time frames. Nifty shares continually within chosen hours, prioritizing ones that you deem to be high activity times. Similarly, Primelister uses a shares per hour style. Honestly, sharing is necessary and important, but as long as you get the job done, I think that's what matters. It doesn't really require a whole ton of customization. However, with offers to likers, I think customizability is important, especially speed. And I'm a strong proponent of sending the offer as soon as you can after the buyer likes or watches something, because that's when they're still on the app. So Flyp is actually the fastest. It can go as fast as 2 minutes. Primelister says it checks periodically, so a brief lag of a few minutes can occur, but you can set it to fire 1 minute after detection, so probably somewhere like 1 to 4 minutes. Nifty ranges from 0 to 5 minutes. List Perfectly checks roughly every 10 minutes, which is definitely slower than I would like. And Vendoo scans your linked marketplaces every 10 to 15 minutes to detect new likes, which again is too slow in my opinion. Also, if customizability is important to you, Primelister is incredibly customizable when it comes to their offers to likers. You can send different offers by a whole host of filters. So you can send different offers by category, for example. So you could send completely different offers to your men's item versus your women's items versus your kids' items, Or for your dresses versus your swimsuits, say you're in the middle of winter and you want to really move swimsuits, you could send 30% off offers on those while maintaining 20% offers on everything else. And you can select specific items to exclude. So if you have like a really high price item you don't want to send offers on, you can do that. And there's a whole lot more. So again, if that sounds interesting, there's a free trial. So click the link in the description below, play around with it and see if that's something that you like. Okay, but then there's one more automation feature that's incredibly important if you are cross-listing, and that's sale detection and auto delisting. Delisting items when a sale occurs used to be the biggest pain point when it came to cross-listing. I personally had many dings to my eBay account due to forgetting to delist before these features were available, but now a lot of these softwares provide the solution for you, which is great. Again, it is worth noting here that for most of the softwares, you have to have your computer and browser open at all times in order for sales detection and auto delist to work. Only Nifty and Primelister can do it on the back end. So let's break it down. As of now, Primelister supports sale detection on Poshmark only, so if you make a sale there, it will automatically be delisted on all other platforms except Facebook Marketplace. Flyp will automatically detect your sales, but you must manually click the Mark as Sold and Delist button, and then it will delist. Vendoo and List Perfectly automatically detect sales and auto delist among all of their supported platforms. And lastly, Nifty. Nifty automatically detects sales and delists, but it goes a step further. All the other reselling softwares listed above will only pull in the price sold, but no other data. Nifty pulls in price sold, platform fees, shipping fees when possible, and it creates a list of all of your orders with their SKUs, which is incredibly helpful while shipping. It also shows the days till sold and your gross profit. And for me, that's huge. It can make a really big impact in your day-to-day operations of your reselling business. And this is also a really good segue into our next topic, bookkeeping and analytics. The bookkeeping part is simple. Only Nifty really includes bookkeeping. Because Nifty pulls in all of that sales data, it also uses that information to generate a profit and loss statement that fills itself. You can also add all of your other expenses under the expense tab, and you can account for your returned, canceled, and refunded sales by clicking on that sale and then just clicking sync, and it will automatically go in and retrieve that information for you. It will also automatically update your profit and loss statement with that info. And at tax time, all of this really matters. Here's why. Your end of year tax statements from each marketplace usually show gross sales. They don't subtract marketplace fees, shipping fees, returns, etc. They also don't factor in your cost of goods and other expenses. So if you file off of the numbers on your 1099 alone, you can end up paying taxes on money you actually never made. So bookkeeping is absolutely necessary when it comes to reselling, and Nifty provides a streamlined solution for it. I think that's a huge feature that is completely unique to Nifty. Okay, now on to analytics. Crosslist and Primelister don't currently offer analytics, but the other softwares on this list do. That said, without harping on it too much, the accuracy and value of your analytics ultimately depends on your sales data. And as we've discussed, Nifty automatically pulls in significantly more sales data, while the others rely on manual entry. Nifty, again, is also the only platform that lets you import historical sales data, which makes a huge difference when it comes to the immediate usefulness of your analytics. That said, just from a design and usability standpoint, I personally preferred the analytics dashboard and Vendoo and Flyp over List Perfectly. List Perfectly's was pretty minimal. There weren't any insights into top-selling brands or categories unless I missed it, which is something that was on Vendoo and was on Flyp, and it's something that I do like to keep an eye on. Okay, next up, inventory management. With inventory management, I'm looking for a software to replace my inventory spreadsheet, so something to track SKUs, days till sold, sales, etc. And I also want to be able to make edits to my listings, such as my SKU or my description, from the software itself. So let's take a look at how each software handles that. Nifty has a solid inventory dashboard with your SKUs, etc. My one complaint is that the listed date is tucked behind the info eye, which is inconvenient. I much prefer the design of Nifty's order page, which can be found behind the analytics tab for some reason, but it clearly has SKU and days listed and all of your sales data neatly organized. I just really like that page. Nifty also lets you make any change by clicking edit and then making your change and clicking update item, and then it'll quickly push that change to all connected marketplaces with just that one click. I was surprised to find out that Flyp lets you edit and push updates too. You do have to update each marketplace at a time, but still, for the price, that's a pretty significant feature that can impact your day-to-day workflow. Unfortunately, Flyp's inventory page is pretty bare bones. You can't see SKU, which I think is an issue from an inventory management standpoint. Crosslist.com's inventory page is well designed. It has a sortable SKU column, a date created column, etc. But on Crosslist.com, you can kind of make a change and push it from their software, but it will just relist the item. And most of the time when I'm trying to make edits to my listing, I don't want to relist it. So I don't know if that's really a viable solution. On List Perfectly, you can also edit your listings, but the flow for this is really time consuming and tedious. You go in and edit your listing on List Perfectly, then you navigate back to the inventory page, click the cross list button, click the marketplaces you want to push the edits to, click update, select what you want to update, click confirm update, and then it will open those tabs with those edits, but then you have to click publish or list on each one of those marketplace tabs. To me, it's nearly as time consuming as doing it manually, but it is technically possible. I do like the inventory page on List Perfectly. The setup allows you to see and sort by your SKUs. You can see the date it was created and last updated. From a UI perspective, I don't love the buttons, but it does get the job done. Vendoo and Primelister do not push edits out. If you need to change a title or a price, for example, you have to go into each marketplace and update that manually. I don't really like Vendoo's inventory page. This is just kind of personal preference, but the important information such as SKU is really, really small. I just kind of prefer a different, more data-centric look. But Primelister's inventory page is solid. I just personally don't like how bulky the stacked marketplaces are, but again, personal preference. But all right, let's wrap with pricing and my final rankings. It is hard to quickly review pricing for each platform because they all have different pricing structures, tiers, and plans. So for this section, I'm going to put their pricing plans up on the screen and use myself as an example. I have about 650 active items. I list about 100 to 200 per month. I cross-list Poshmark, Mercari, eBay, and soon Depop, and I want to use as many features as possible. All right, let's start with Vendoo. On their website, Vendoo's plans look pretty straightforward, but there are a few caveats. So first, I would have to start with an unlimited plan of $69.99 in order to just import my 650 items. After that, I could then reduce my plan to the Plus plan at $29.99, but then I'd have to add sharing, which is $9.99, and I would have to pay $11.99 for importing, bulk delisting, and relisting, and all marketplaces. So my first month would be $91.97 to get everything imported, and then after that it would be $51.97. If I ever wanted to list more than 250 items within a month, that number would increase to $71.97. And also, it's worth noting that it is much cheaper if you pay yearly. So for the Pro plan with all the add-ons, it would come out to $41.58 a month, but you'd have to pay $499 upfront. Next, List Perfectly. List Perfectly has quite a few different plans, but in order to access the auto delist feature, I need to pay the $100 Pro Plus tier. I'm personally not a fan of tucking essential features behind the top plan. I'd rather see core features available to everyone and then price by usage as your business scales. And so $100 is the most expensive plan on this list, which is tough. Nifty recently removed the credit system, which I am happy about. Now it's $69.99 for closets up to 1,500 active listings and $89.99 if you're above that. So I would be $69.99. If you just want the automation features of Nifty or you just want cross-listing, you can pay $39.99 per month for just those individually. And that includes automation and cross-listing for all of their supported marketplaces. Additionally, they recently introduced yearly plans with $62.99 per month for all the features, or $35.99 per month for just the cross-listing or automation plans. But again, that requires paying hundreds of dollars up front, which isn't always feasible. Okay, crosslist.com, this is similar to Vendoo, where I found that I would have to pay $39.99 in my first month just to import all of my inventory, and then probably move down to $29.99 after that. I'd also have to pay $4.99 per month in order to use their AI feature. And since they're a software with just cross-listing only without bookkeeping or analytics or even sales tracking, that is a pretty steep price in my opinion, especially since you'd have to pair it with an automation software as well. With Primelister, there's no one overarching plan. There are listing plans, and then there's a Poshmark automation plan and an eBay automation plan. You basically have to get the pro plan for the listing plan because the basic one doesn't include cross listings, and I can't imagine why anyone would get the basic plan. So the pro plan is $49.99 a month. And then to add Poshmark automation, that's an additional $25, and eBay automation is an additional $15. So that comes out to $89.99, which is the second highest on the list. They do offer a really big annual discount. I believe it's the largest of any software. You get 30% off if you pay annually, but again, that does require you to pay hundreds of dollars up front and you're locked in for a year. Next up, Flyp. Flyp is by far the most affordable software. It is an incredible $9 a month after a very generous 100-day free trial. Again, it's not nearly as robust as something like Nifty, for instance, but for the price, it is a really good software. Price is definitely a huge factor for a lot of resellers when they're choosing a software. But again, I think it's really important to remember that these softwares are designed to make you more money, and they all truly do. Not only by sending offers and exposing you to more potential customers through cross-listing, but also by saving you a lot of time so you can leverage your time to sourcing more, listing more, etc. Often, it only takes an additional 2 to 4 sales per month in order for these softwares to be worth it. And in my experience, they should easily help you generate that. Just because a software costs more doesn't necessarily mean it's better, which brings me to my final impressions and rankings. Before I dive into rankings, I wanted to summarize what I thought about each software after stress testing each of them. Not only their features, but also the overall user experience. Okay, so let's start with Vendoo. I think for a very long time, Vendoo was the very best reselling software on the market. The listing and cross-listing flow is reliable and intuitive. The user interface is clean and well designed. If you want to list on a bunch of different marketplaces, I think Vendoo is a great option. Importantly, Vendoo is the only software on this list with an app. So if you're primarily a mobile-based seller, I think that's a huge plus. However, onboarding is incredibly time-consuming to the point that if you have already been cross-listing to multiple marketplaces, I wouldn't recommend Vendoo. Also, I think it has fallen behind features-wise. It doesn't pull in your sales data, you can't edit your listings, the AI isn't great, you have to have your computer on at all times in order to use the automation features. But overall, I think it's a steady and dependable software with a clean design. All right, next up, List Perfectly. List Perfectly was the very first cross-listing software that I ever used. I love that it started by female founders. I really admire and respect the contributions that they've made to the reselling community, and I really appreciate the features that they're continually trying to add to their software. However, this was the one software with which we spent the most amount of time reading the help documentation because it really was not intuitive. I was constantly trying to figure out where things were hidden, how to perform different tasks, etc. The user experience just felt kind of clunky. It seems like they've added tons of new features over the years, but haven't necessarily prioritized design. And so if you're used to using List Perfectly, I could see the design being no problem, but as a new user, it was really disorienting. But mainly, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the marketplace assistance flow where the software opens tabs and helps you fill out the listings on each marketplace's native website. That's just not for me, so it's not my preference. But lastly, the pricing structure makes it the most expensive software in the list. I know a lot of people love List Perfectly, but personally, I struggled with it. All right, next, Nifty. I am really impressed with Nifty software, and I'm even more impressed after testing it head-to-head against these other softwares. The onboarding is super fast, the listing and cross-listing flow is innovative, really well designed, streamlined, and again, fast. The AI integration is by far the best of any software. The cloud-based automation tools, the sales data, the ability to update your listings on all marketplaces with one click, and the bookkeeping sets it apart. I do wish the offers to likers on Poshmark was a little bit faster if I wanted to nitpick. I also kind of wish it had a better dashboard. I really miss Fern's goal setting feature that we had on our dashboard, and it'd be cool if Nifty implemented something like that, but again, that's just a nitpicky preference thing. The only real downside to Nifty is that it's not cheap. It's a real business investment, and if you're just starting out or reselling part-time, it may not make financial sense. Okay, next, Crosslist.com. This software is definitely different from the others because it doesn't attempt to include all the bells and whistles. It just sticks to cross-listing, but it allows you to do something that no other software can do: bulk cross-list with just a few clicks. For instance, you could have your entire Poshmark closet listed over to Depop in the span of an afternoon with minimal effort. It is very ambitious and it's very enticing, but like I mentioned, it does come at the cost of sacrificing some listing quality, and it becomes difficult when cross-listing from Poshmark to eBay, for instance, or if you just want to make sure that all your details on your Poshmark listings are filled out. This is not a great option, but if you can live with fewer details and slightly lower listing quality, the speed and ease of this cross-listing tool could be really powerful in your reselling business. Okay, next, Flyp. If I had to summarize my experience with Flyp in 2 words, it would be pleasant surprise. Yes, they used to be a consignment marketplace with free tools that felt buggy, but today at $9 per month, it's a steal for what you get. Onboarding is really smooth and easy to navigate. It has a solid user experience with intuitive design. I like the cross-listing and listing flow. The automation offerings are on par with Vendoo and List Perfectly. And you can edit your listings from Flyp, which is something you still can't do on Vendoo. Of course, like I mentioned, it can't do everything that Nifty can do, for instance, and it still requires you to keep your computer and browser running. It doesn't have any AI integration. It lacks inventory management and bookkeeping, but it does all the basic stuff really well, and it does it for an incredibly affordable price. If I were just getting started, I would start here. Okay, Primelister. I see a lot of people I follow on Instagram use Primelister, so I was really excited to try it out, and I am impressed with their Poshmark automation customizations. I also really like that their automation is based on the back end and doesn't require a computer or browser to be open. I think that is a huge advantage. However, like I mentioned with List Perfectly, I really don't like the marketplace assistance cross-listing and listing flow, and while it does have a modern and clean design, I found it to be a little bit slow to load at times. That might just be my testing. But overall, I think if you like the List Perfectly style listing, but you want to try something different, this is a good option. Okay, final rankings. Number 1, Nifty. This is the software that I use and I recommend most, especially after testing it against the others. It has so many features that other softwares don't, saves so much time, makes you money, and the overall experience is just pleasant to use. The only downside is cost, which leads me to number 2, Flyp. This is the one that surprised me. For the price, you get a really well-designed software that does all the basics really well. I think it's really comparable to Vendoo at a fraction of the price. Plus, you get a 100-day free trial, and then it's only $9 a month. Number 3, Vendoo. I generally really like Vendoo's user interface. I like the cross-listing flow. Even though it is slower than Nifty's, it's still really reliable. I think it's intuitive and priced fairly. Number 4, Primelister. Running automation on the back end is really useful, and I do wish it auto delisted on more marketplace, but I think that's coming soon. It's got really great Poshmark automation features with so many customization options. My background light has gone out, but we must persist. Number 5 is List Perfectly. It really just didn't seem intuitive, and it took a long time for me to figure out how to perform tasks. And because they tuck their features behind their expensive plans, I'd have to pay $100, and at that price point, I just feel like there are better softwares out there. Last place for me, number 6, Crosslist.com. I do feel like the concept for this software is really cool, but for me, the execution kind of falls flat, especially when you try to cross-list from Poshmark to eBay, for example, and it's not cheap like Flyp is. It's still $35 a month with AI, and you need another automation software on top of that as well. So I just feel like there are better options, but I could see some certain resellers really loving this option. It just wouldn't be my go-to recommendation. But that's the video. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments section. And if I made any mistakes, feel free to correct me down there as well. And again, if you use the links in the description, they're affiliate links. So thank you so much. It really helps support this channel. And with that, I'll see y'all in the next one. Okay, love y'all. Bye.